Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mark from SolarGames. Hopefully you missed me. It's been a while. We've been really busy with other stuff, life stuff, card source stuff, all the other random stuff, building a new computer, setting up this other whatever going on, life things. Anyways, we're on the eve of release of Distorted Reflections by Grand Archive. So Grand Archives has a new set, Distorted Reflections. I'm hoping I'm saying the right S's and the T's and in the right positions this time, hopefully. Okay. It's not like I've messed up every other set before or something. Okay, so we're on the eve of the release of this set. In fact, it's actually going to release this coming Friday, so I'm making this video now just to share with you guys all my general senses of where the set's going, how it's actually performing, where I think this set is going to go, and should you buy this set heavily or not, right? So I kind of felt like I did a little bit of this here and there for HVN, FTC, some of the sets I was kind of interested in, but I never did an official review of a set before it released. And it's kind of serves a general purpose for long term, where I can see how well my predictions perform versus, I guess reality, right? So again, I don't know. Today is Monday, July the 21st, right? So that's the recording of this video. It's probably going to release tomorrow. And I don't know what's going to happen to the set. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what the future is going to look like. But what I do understand that, again, DTR is about to release. There are some confusion, communication. There were some hype about the set, but also there were some reservations from some of the players about the set because of the way that the artwork looked. So I'm just going to kind of talk about it all, maybe provide a couple analytical perspectives for you and little comparables from other previous sets so that we can have a good conversation about just what this set's probably going to do. Again, not, real financial advice here. I'm just providing this for entertainment purposes only, right? So don't buy or spec things based on what I say. I'm just some idiot on the interwebs telling you to, I don't know, chew on cardboard or something, right? So yeah, don't spend more money than you can spend. But the key here is today we're going to talk about Distorted Reflections, but also specifically compare that to Mortal Ambition and, of course, Abyssal Heaven, which were the two previous sets released. And in some ways, I think made a lot of stores and players a little bit jittery because these two sets have been performing maybe below market, right? Because I think perhaps there was too many product or whatnot. So we're going to talk all about that today. So let's see. By the numbers. First thing, I've already made this chart. This is very helpful. Whenever we do these analytical videos, it's helpful to have the data, which is why we have that here. So I will pick some colors that are going to be, show up pretty well in the video. Hopefully you guys can all see these pretty well. If not, then we'll also talk through it. So verbally, you can hear what I'm saying. So first things first, right? DTR set. The set size is actually fairly large. I guess I realized I never made a column for it. I'll write it on the left-hand side. So the set size, right, for DTR is actually fairly large. It is a main set, so that's something to consider. The closest comparable you can think of is really just Mortal Ambition. So that's going to be this one right here, right? But the set size for DTR is actually going to be 222 cards, okay? Except the thing to think about here is it's kind of like actually plus or minus. I think it's plus 20 more cards because of the different variants. You can get CSR versions, CUR versions, etc., right? Now, when we take a look at, for example, Mortal Ambition, that set's not print run, but its card size is actually 229. Again, plus or minus some more cards depending on its, other factors, right? Like, CSR, CURs, etc. So, but one thing to consider here is actually this number is a little bit fake because the 229 also includes a bunch of key reprints. Remember, A and B was supposed to be the foundational reboot of Grand Archive, kind of, right? So the idea is cards like Dungeon Guide, Creative Shock, Increasing Danger, a lot of the Hasty Messenger, Clumsy Apprentice, Zephyr, right? A lot of the core cards of different elements, Water Barrier, whatever, were reprinted in Mortal Ambition. So technically, unique cards was a lot less than 229. Whereas in DTR, there are very few, if at all any. Again, the set's pretty new, so I haven't reviewed every single card, but what I'm seeing right now so far is all new cards. So this is technically a much bigger set than A and B, something to consider here, right? So what about the print runs for each set? So A and B had a print run of 39K, okay? 39,000, right? HVN, comparatively, for example, had a print run of 69. Very nice. Print run set over here. And of course, DTR actually, surprisingly, maybe, has a lower print run than HVN. Now, some people are saying, like, why did, GA, decide to lower the print run? I think this is a pretty clear decision made by Grand Archive Weaves of the Shore to say that this number closer or more closely matches the demand of the current player base, right? I think, and a lot of people do also believe, that 69, right, thousand for HVN was probably on the higher side. Now, of course, we're expanding into a new region. Japan is the newest region to kind of come online around the time of AMB and HVN. And of course, that region being as big as it is, obviously you have more players who are definitely going to be interested in the card game. So there was maybe a gambit made around 69,000 and see if that number would hold. And what I'm seeing so far is, I'll tell you this, right? DTR right now at my distro, sold out. I can't get any more DTR, okay? The set's already kind of like whatever you order, you already have. AMB also sold out. I can't get any more AMB. But HVN, I can order more HVN. So that is a good indicator of like where kind of HVN sits with respect to the other two sets, right? So here's the second thing to think about here too is how did each one of these sets perform? So looking at AMB first, right? Oh, by the way, there's what's the set size for HVN? I think it's like, was it 213 cards or something? Let me see if I have this somewhere. Checking my notes. Somewhere around here. Okay. I think, 213. That's right. So my memory serves correctly. It's 213 cards for HVN, right? Again, some reprints in there as well. A little bit less than AMB, but still some reprints, right? So slightly smaller set. But remember, HVN is supposed to be smaller anyways. It's an expansion set. I actually think that Grand Archive has been a little bit too ambitious maybe with some of these expansion sets being as big as the base set. Maybe the base set should be a little bit bigger, 250 cards, etc., 280 maybe even target for, of course with reprints, and have the expansion sets be a little smaller, maybe like 180 or something. Like I think at the 200 plus mark, it's pretty big as a set, right? Obviously, there's also some considerations for set configuration. Technically, HVN boxes are smaller, so even though it's 69K, right, you got to really think it's a little bit less than that because the boxes are smaller, right? Because there's less cards per box than in a standard set like AMB or DTR. So if we factor that part in, the print run for DTR is actually probably similar to HVN, not like drastically less, as a lot of people are saying, right, or thinking about. Maybe not drastically, but strictly less. If you calculate the math, I think it actually comes out a lot closer total number of cards printed than you think. Money. This is very important, right? So what happened with AMB? With a 39K print run, it's a fairly, compared to these kind of numbers, this is pretty small, right? AMB actually is down quite a bit. So AMB, I think right now is like around 360, right? Per case. So I'm starting to value these instead of by the booster box, by the case price. Simply for the factor of like booster boxes technically can be, I don't know, like you could have gotten the hit from the case. So the booster boxes essentially could be cheaper if they're sold individually. So I'll value the case instead, right? So the case for AMB is about 360. I think it's like a little bit higher, 365, whatever. Just to say 360, pretty good estimate, right? Similarly for HVN, it's going to be about 360 as well. I think HVN technically is a little bit higher than AMB, but they're around that range, which if you think about like MSRP or kind of your like map pricing is around 75-ish or something. Technically, AMB is actually the one that crashed more because these main sets usually have a higher map pricing or MSRP or whatever than the expansion sets. The expansion sets are slightly cheaper, both from the distro, but also from like, any seller selling this directly to you. So the fact that these two are similar price is a little bit interesting, right? But part of that factor, by the way, is the some of the cards contained within the set, right? And just in general, like how powerful AMB is versus HVN is kind of where it is. DTR, of course, yet to be released, so the pricing isn't really there. So how do we really think about all this data that's kind of in here, right? So the general trend for both these sets have been kind of like a little bit downward sloping, right? for both AMB and HVN so far. Now, you know what I think about downward sloping trends in general, right? What I said about FTC, what I said about ALC, when those two sets were kind of in a glut or in a down bad position, right? Getting beat up by all the brothers around them. Like DOA was just laughing at FTC the whole time. I was buying FTC because I realized the set was better than a lot of people kind of gave credit for, and Weeb's response in general to FTC's overprinting, if you will, was very novel and interesting to me, right? It was a gambit, it was a bet I was willing to take in favor of Weebs. Similarly, for AMB and HVN, my kind of thinking right now is, yes, HVN is down a lot, AMB is down a lot, right? Which, again, I predicted this a little bit in my last video about HVN. However, what I'm thinking is, my kind of theory on this is AMB actually has some good cards, and so does HVN. So I think longer term, as soon as this kind of supply gets dwindled a little bit more, I actually expect AMB probably to pop up pretty quick, right? But again, this video isn't about AMB or HVN. These are just comparables because we really want to understand DTR, right? We understand distorted reflections, how that's going to play with respect to the future of Grand Archive for the set, right? So the print run number gives me a little bit concern. It's not a huge concern, but 59K is still pretty big. I do like the fact that we're kind of holding back a little bit, not saying, okay, now this number should be bigger than HVN, like 79K, 89K, whatever. It's actually a little bit lower, and so if you count total cards, it should be about the same as HVN, right? Now, of course, we do also have a bigger region that's coming online with Japan. And again, more players in US and other regions as well. So in some ways, 59 is almost like a very, like we're keeping supply even as the demand kind of catches up. If you can imagine the kind of two curves that we're talking about here, right? So if we think about demand holding still like this, and then maybe supply holding still like this, and demand kind of slowly raising up. So we're getting close to equilibrium of supply and demand, which is where a lot, everybody wants to be, right? Because that's where you have perfect pricing. And in general, right, of course, AMB and HVN sentiment was that they were overprinted. Like initially, I think with AMB, we had a supply issue where it was released, and then I remember not having enough. I got my allocation cut by a lot, right? Again, this number was pretty drastic. But then pretty quickly, I think that the hydration of the market came through. We had enough boxes, I think, for everybody. So overall, right, later on, of course, the market kind of went down. I still have quite a bit of AMB still sitting in the garage. I don't really care. Honestly, long term, I think it should be fine, right? And when I say long term, I mean like honestly just about 3 years from now, I expect AMB to be totally fine, first edition, right? Was HVN overprinted? I think overall the sentiment is probably yes, given that I'm seeing HVN still fairly healthily supplied by the distributors. So there's quite a bit of that within the distribution, which means that this price should actually be a little bit lower, or at least hold at 360 for a long time. Just to understand right now, at 360, you are pretty close. You're not quite at distro pricing, but you're pretty close, especially if you add in all the fees, the shipping, the credit card processing fees, etc., that you would have to take on buying from distribution, right? So it's a little bit of that too. So my thinking now with DTR is that out of the gate, we're going to have a similar situation as the AMB, right? Except this time, I'm pretty sure we won't have a supply issue because as far as my orders went this time, I ordered quite a bit. I think I'm above 250 boxes or 260 total for my order alone. And my entire order has been fulfilled. So at this point, I have not been cut. Everything's fine. I get the full shipment. Now, to be fair, I did protect myself a little bit with DTR. Actually started around HVN, but basically I now have 2 distributors to supply me instead of 1. So if I get cut by one of them, I'm actually totally fine. And the second distributor I've brought on board recently has been very consistent, so I'm very happy with them. Like if I order pretty much any amount, they'll ship it, so it's good, right? Have that relationship, have that trust structure is very important for me. But those are all good factors to consider. Now, the CUR for DTR, right? And this is like maybe a kind of a characteristic that's a little bit unqualifiable. I can't put it into numbers here. The CUR for this set is actually very interesting. Now, unlike HVN and AMB, I would say, the CUR for DTR seems very playable and only gets better maybe on the next set, right? So the whole idea here right now is DTR, CUR is like a very aggressive level 1. And we haven't really had a level 1 CUR in a long time, right? DOA, of course, initially we had all the level 1s as CURs. And you can imagine, like all level 1s, I think, from DOA as an example, right? Dawn of Ashes, first edition, they're the most expensive because they're the level 1s essentially that can go into any deck, right? Level 3 is where you have to kind of lock in your lineage, but level 1 in general allows a lot of branching. Like Rai was very playable. Rai is in general not playable, so that's probably the worst level 1 right now, but Xander, very playable. Sylvie, when Slime was in, super playable. Lorraine has never really left the meta, and, you know, if the future is good for Crux, I think Lorraine's kind of back in it now, right? So now we have a new level 1 as a CUR inside DTR. I think it will perform very well. So that's one factor that's, you know, a little bit of an X factor. Hard to predict how that's going to go. I also think this level 1, of course, it's almost as good as the Spirit. It's not quite because this one is really for aggro decks, Alice. But it does give me a lot of hope for the CUR in this set, meaning this is a chase CUR that I think people are going to pay a lot of money for. It's my personal thinking here. And the artwork factor of this set is actually kind of interesting, right? Initially, when the set was released, a lot of people didn't like that fanciful fairy tale kind of artwork. It was too cartoony, too Disney, too, I don't know how to say it, right? Like people want their trading card game to be like, you know, murderous intent and, you know, adult or whatever. However, I think after seeing a lot of the artworks actually revealed and seeing the Grand Archive, the Weaves of the Shore take on Alice in Wonderland of this theme, I think a lot of people have come around, myself personally as well, right? Initially, I was a little bit like concerned. I was like, is this like a magic school thing? And it turns into like, okay, Alice in Wonderland, cool. But the artwork itself is kind of nice. I personally think there's quite a bit of really interesting artwork. Like my preview card, Ashen Riffle, for example, really nice artwork, really, you know, cool looking themes. And of course, like, they're basically telling me Merlin's back. I mean, at this point, if Merlin's back, dude, I'm buying the set. Like Merlin itself sells the set for me, right? And so what I can tell you right now is DTR, the sentiment, the whole like, you know, how the player base feels right now, I think it's pretty positive, right? There's a lot of Deanna players that are coming back. CL is really like, I mean, honestly, CL is probably the most popular, you know, GA dude right now. I think Tenoris got dethroned by CL, to be honest, right? But yeah, CL right now is like a seemingly very playable Guardian. People are really happy about CL in general. I'm kind of looking forward to that. So I think DTR has a lot of playable cards. It has a lot of like things going for it, and even the artwork piece, the part about the thematics, a lot of players have turned around on it. So that's all positive, right? So in conclusion, do I think this is all like, you know, buy signals for DTR, like buy, get your DTR today, right? I think it's too early to tell. I really think so. So I think for most players, if you guys are super excited for DTR, that's great. But hold back a little bit and consider longer term whether that makes sense, right? So I would not say for sure buy it right now. I would also not say like, oh, hey, just, you know, stand on the sidelines, don't buy any DTR right now. I think it's a set that you probably can consider purchasing a little bit of. I just wouldn't go crazy because I think the set and the supply is very healthy, right? However, if you are on the other side, you're sitting on the sidelines, you don't think you want to participate in DTR, I think you're missing out. And that's kind of how I feel, right? So this set was, in my perspective, I think, other than MRC first edition, it's probably the biggest order size I have made for GA so far, initially. Let's just put it this way, it's initially, right? It's definitely the biggest because MRC, what I think was bigger only because I was resupplying at a point later. I had initially like, I don't know, 150 boxes of MRC or something, right? Then I bought like 300 more. Anyways, long story short, MRC was a black swan event, so that situation that happened. I think DTR has a good chance to potentially just be a very nice even keel set. Like it releases, generally the supply is healthy. It's not, it's not under or over, which keeps the pricing kind of even. And as soon as the deck starts, really playing and players need more cards and we open more boxes to supply the market, we could actually see maybe potentially even an uptick, a slight uptick with DTR beyond the release. I don't know, right? So hard to tell right now because again, there's so much product. Like if this set was printed like at the same as A and B, I can for sure tell you that is going to be low, meaning we're going to have a supply issue, right? But because it's at 59K, I'm a little bit more conservative about my prediction of whether this set will do well. I think there's a lot of good elements going for it, but I do think I am a little bit concerned about that print run as well as a lot of people in the community. So in conclusion, right, like I would say the print run reduction is definitely healthy. I think it's smart to not have gone higher than 59, but even at 59, I personally feel like there's a little bit of concern, right? Especially kind of just objectively looking at the numbers. AMB 39K still feels like a glut, right? Because right now the market is saying 360 per box. And DTR at 59K, do I think longer term, let's say looking out maybe about 3-4 months from release, is it going to hit like 360? Who knows, right? So that's kind of my conclusion. Again, DTR, this set is pretty good. It's looking really, really good. There's a lot of good elements for it. And again, it's 1E, so it won't be reprinted, right? So technically, whatever 1E you buy that you hold, they should be good longer term. However, it's like, what is your time horizon? Like, I'm sure, for example, if you buy even HVN right now, right? So if HVN dips below, let's say 300, I think it's a pretty clear buy signal, right? And maybe even lower than that, who knows, right? If HVN hard crashes like FTC did, where it went down to like, I don't know, 200 basically, I think that's a clear buy, right? My personal opinion. However, DTR, I don't expect to dip that far. I actually think that DTR should land if it does dip lower. Like the bottom for DTR should be around like maybe 400-ish, right? Meaning I think it's a little bit higher than HVN and AMB, but it's really not going to go like, super low. However, that is also the bottom. The upward potential for DTR could be higher as well. Again, because we're supplied regionally, so there could be more boxes in Japan or other regions that, in US we don't have. So we could have a situation where maybe boxes are super cheap in Australia, but they're terribly expensive in the US, right? And now we have an issue of like, how do you import that in here without incurring tariff and whatever? So there's that possibility as well. So I'll leave that as it is. Just consider again, GA is growing, and a lot of the stuff I've shared with you today is just kind of like my speculation. It doesn't mean anything really. It's maybe just points for you to consider if you haven't really thought about these numbers. A lot of you guys watching, I know, have kind of considered these things. So DTR, like longer term, I would say it's fine to probably just hold a couple boxes. But only stores like myself, bigger stores, I guess, would probably even want to hold a good chunk of it in storage because realistically, who knows what's going to happen with the market with that kind of print run, right? And if our player base doesn't drastically increase for next season, then what happens? Wouldn't this just be extra supply that we have to, kind of house forever? So that's the conclusion for this video. I'm Mark from Solar Games. I'm really happy that I'm back and making more videos, and I'll see you guys next time. But remember, no matter what happens to DTR, no matter if it crashes or does really well, always stay classy.